Call this Altoona City Council meeting to order Monday, June 13th at 6 p.m. We'll now have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Linda, would you take the roll call, please?
Councilman Beatty.
Here.
Councilman Butterbaugh.
Here.
Councilman Carper.
Here.
Councilman Ellis.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ickes.
Here.
Councilman Kelly.
Here.
Mayor Pacifico.
Here. I'll jump into the presentations for this evening. First, we have from the Blair Regional YMCA, Phyllis Baker and Frank Capriva to talk about the Giaosa 4th of July Memorial Race.
All right, thank you for having us. We are honored to carry on the tradition of the Giaosa 4th of July Memorial Race. This will be the 49th official running of the race. Although the diehards will say this is the 50th year because there was a running when the bridge was out, but officially that did not count. So this is the 49th running. Last year we were excited that we were able to have an unlimited race, and we had 643 participants, but we're hopeful that this year we can get back to the 5-year average we had previous to all the disruptions, which was around 850 people. And on top of that, we're probably having 2,000 plus people in downtown Altoona, which has a lot of momentum right now, and we're really excited and honored to carry on that tradition that was started 49 years ago.
It's tough to follow two really cute dogs, so I'm glad we're going first. We want to thank the city, Mayor Pacifico, Vice Mayor, all the councilmen, Police Chief Merrell, Fire Chief Tim Heilman. Without all of you, we could never do this race. You keep us safe. And we know it's the 4th. We understand that vacations and whatnot come into play, but every intersection we need protected, you guys do it by providing water sprays on the spot, which everybody enjoys, to really cool cops who encourage us on and encourage the racer, to Mayor Pacifico, who always supports us in the best way, to the community that sponsors us, everybody down the course. They're excited to be a part of what we do. And to go down to the plaza, to the divorce, center or the pavilion, to see the people and the kids and the lollipop runs that have close to now 50 plus kids just running their little hearts out for a smiley cookie. We couldn't do it without you. So we thank you, and we're honored to be able to hold this tradition and make it bigger and better every year.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
please, and you're invited down to speak. So
I'll be there.
super.
I
We appreciate
look forward to it every 4th.
it. And we look forward to having you there. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a recognition of retired Altoona Fire Department arson dog Tyra and the introduction ceremony for Lucille, AFD's new Accelerant detection canine. Chief Almond.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff members. Thank you for allowing us the time tonight to introduce you to the newest member of the Altoona Fire Department, Lucille. Lucille's a canine whose sole mission is to detect accelerant during our fire inspectors' cause and origin investigations. Acting Fire Inspector Justin Smithmeyer is Lucille's handler and has taken on a huge responsibility to train and work with Lucille. I'm not going to take any of his thunder. He's going to explain to you some of the things he has to do to keep her trained and working. This accelerant detection canine program is only possible with the generosity of State Farm Insurance, who provides all the funding to acquire and train our canine partners. This State Farm program has been very successful here in Altoona. As you know, this is our second canine team to join our ranks in inspecting for the presence of accelerants. Tyra, who retired last year, is with Tim Hughes tonight and have joined us in introducing Lucille. Please join me in a nice round right now for Tim and Tyra. Some of the representatives from State Farm are here tonight to give a presentation to Tyra and Tim Hughes.
On behalf of State Farm, we'd like to thank you for your service.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
A lot more gray now hanging out with me. Thank you.
All right.
I would just like to thank Chief Almond for giving me the opportunity when it came around to acquire Tyra. It was a great opportunity. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun to see her work at a scene. So it made my career. So thank you.
Okay, so now I'd like Justin and Lucille to come up and tell us a little bit more about the work that they do for the city. And Lucille has agreed to give us a little bit of a demonstration of the capabilities that she has. So please just stay seated. She's probably going to look around here and find something for us. But Justin's going to come up and talk to you now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. As Chief said, I'm Justin Smithmeyer. I'm the acting fire inspector here in town. This is my new partner, Lucille. She's making friends with Tyra, as you can see. So a little bit about Lucille. She's a 2-year-old black lab. She actually, previous to becoming an arson detection canine, she was enrolled in a program to become a seeing eye dog. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to complete that program. I'm not exactly sure why, but seeing as how she was already ready to serve, the organization that did train her, Maine Specialty Dogs, located in Maine, they actually drove down to Florida, which is where she was located at, and they gave her a little test, see if she was good enough to be an arson canine. She met the requirements. They spent about 6 months with her, imprinting her with her target odor, which is gas, and she's been able to do a really good job with that here. We'll show you here in a little bit. But like I said, they trained her for about 6 months before we got paired up. I traveled to Concord, New Hampshire in April and spent 4 weeks up there. We trained together for roughly about, they said about 200 hours, but I think total it came out to right around 300 hours. We trained 7 days a week, anywhere from 10 to 14-hour days. So it was an intensive program. I think Tim can attest to that. They have high standards and they want you to meet them. So Lucille's capabilities, her main goal is to go through a fire scene and to detect any kind of accelerants. That can be anything from gasoline to diesel fuel to lighter fluid and anything in between. They say on average these dogs can detect anywhere from 20 to 30 different kinds of accelerants. And she only trains on one type of target odor right now, which is 50% evaporated gas. And with that one target odor, she can smell between 20 and 30 different kinds of accelerants. During the time that we were up there, they taught us how to use that accelerant to continually train. So she's constantly training, sniffing the floor to find accelerants in those locations, as well as staircases. She's capable of sniffing gas off of people who may have dumped gas in a location. So sometimes arsonists, after they light a fire, they want to go back to a scene and see all the excitement. So she's capable of going through a crowd and sniffing people and finding if there's any kind of accelerants on somebody and try to track somebody down that way. She's also capable of sniffing in open fields. If there's gas outside of a house or if somebody tried to light a field or something on fire, she's capable of sniffing that stuff out as well. During the 300 hours that we were up there, we spent a lot of time learning how to read the dog. She has specific cues that she'll give out, not only just a primary alert whenever she does find an accelerant, but also whenever she's interested in something, she found an odor and she's trying to track it down. She has different ways that she can tell me that she's on that. So that was a large part of the class. We also spent time going through basic canine first aid. Unfortunately, fire scenes, they're not always pristine. There are hazards there. So we have to be able to take care of our canine counterparts here in case something would happen. I think I have a medical bag in my car that has more medical equipment for her than it does if I were to get injured. But we're also taught how to watch for different kinds of illnesses which may come with the line of work that she's in, whether it be she's overexerted, she's dehydrated, if she were to get into something in a fire scene and potentially, unfortunately, get poisoned, that kind of thing. So we spent quite a few amount of hours going through all of that. At the end of the 200 hours, we actually traveled to a testing facility, and we were evaluated by a trooper from the Maine State Police Canine Division. She's getting a little excited here. That trooper evaluated us on 5 field tests, and then we also had a written exam that we had to take. The written exam was 50 questions, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they were all fill in the blank with no choices that you could put in. Their theory was you either know the material or you don't, and quite a few of them had more than one blank answer. You're pretty much writing a paragraph. So they want to make sure that when you go in the field that you're the content expert, you know what you're doing, and that you're ready to work. Now, once we passed the written exam, well, I passed the written exam. She didn't have to do anything for that one. Her part was easy on the field tests. Once we went through the 5 field tests and the trooper felt that we were adequate enough to be certified, he gave us our certification. So we are currently certified through the Maine State Police to the standards of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, which, from what I'm told, is one of the most prestigious canine organizations in the country. Currently, there are only 2 that are really highly ranked, I guess, in the country, which is this group here, Maine Specialty Dogs, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Between the 2, there's roughly, I think they said about 150 teams in the U.S. and Canada. We're one of only 5 in the state of Pennsylvania. We roughly, I think we'll cover somewhere in the ballpark of 12 to 17 counties, I believe. But while we are waiting for our calls to go out, Lucille has to train daily. She's not like a normal dog where you can put a bowl of food in front of her and she can eat out of the bowl twice a day. She's what's called a food reward dog. I know some of you were familiar with how Tyra operated, and I know some of you are relatively new to the city here and may not be very familiar with how canines work, or food reward canines work, rather. In order for her to eat, she has to train or she has to work. So if we're at a fire scene and she ends up finding an accelerant, she gives her primary alert and she's rewarded with food. If we're not at a fire scene, in order to get her food count into her throughout the day, we have to do different kinds of training. And like I said before, she can train on stairs, people, things like that. We have to do that several times a day, several times a week, varying the training, just so that she can get her food numbers into her. And unlike normal dogs that eat out of a bowl, she only eats out of my hand. I can put a bowl of food in front of her and she'll sit there and stare at me and kind of wonder why I'm not feeding her. So she's a little bit different than most dogs. I don't think Tyra ate out of a bowl until she retired, correct? Yeah. Yeah. After eating out of somebody's hand for so long, it takes a little bit of training to teach them how to be a regular dog. But she gets different amounts of food every day, and she gets it in different times of the day as well. For instance, today her first feeding wasn't until almost 11 o'clock this morning, and she actually has not eaten since. So she'll have a training session while we're here tonight, and then we'll have another training session after this. And then tomorrow it'll be a different amount of food, different varying times of the day where we do our training. And I've trained with her at times up to about 6 or 8 times a day, depending on what we have to do. So she requires a little bit of work. She's like a finely tuned athlete, and to be able to keep her going the way that she needs to be able to serve not only the citizens of Altoona, but Blair County and the surrounding counties, it takes a team. And we actually have quite a few sponsors that have stepped forwards to help us. As Chief said, State Farm was the primary sponsor who donated a lot of the not only the time, but also the funds in order for us to get certified initially. But once we return home, the cost that it would take to keep her up and running falls back on our home departments or the city. So in order to try to alleviate as much cost as possible, we've actually been able to partner with some great organizations who have donated time, donated funds, donated materials. And those companies are here on the board. We have State Farm, Sylvan Veterinary Hospital, Heinz Feed Store, the Fromm family who make Fromm dog food, and CNA Pet Grooming. They've all been fantastic in, like I said, donating time or funds or product in order to keep Lucille going here. She's valued at about $25,000, so we want to make sure she's kept at her prime as much as possible, and we wouldn't be able to do it without these sponsors, and we're open to any new partnerships that we can make with any organizations, not only here in the city, but outside the city as well. Now, I've been standing up here babbling for a couple minutes. I know you all are kind of wanting to see how she works here. As you can see, she's saving her energy. She doesn't want to overexert herself. But some of her capabilities, one of the exams that we had to do, she had to find 1/3 of a drop of gas. I'll repeat that, 1/3 of a drop. And everybody knows about how small a drop is. And that was put into a can of burnt wood and burnt paper and created 2.5 weeks before our exam. And that was sealed. And we didn't know which can it was, and the instructors didn't know. It was actually made by a chemist, and I had to rely on her to be able to find it and pass the test. And I don't know why I was worried. I mean, she's a rock star with it here, and she got us through that test with no problem. So how I reward her is with food that's in a pouch. Whenever we go to work, I'll put the pouch on, and I'll give her a command to seek, and she'll start looking and sniffing the ground, trying to find accelerants. Trying to give you guys a little bit of a heads up what's going on, because once I step away from the mic, I don't know who will be able to hear me here outside of this room. But you'll definitely see a change in demeanor here. She's very calm right now, but as soon as I dig in my backpack and put that pouch on, she'll lighten up here and she'll be ready to work. So bear with me here a couple minutes. I'll get her ready, and we'll do a little demonstration for you.
While Justin's getting her ready, I'd just like to recognize some of the folks that we have here tonight. First, from Senator Casey's office, Liz Kishbaugh. From Congressman Joyce's office, Joe Dombrowski. And two of our Blair County Commissioners, Bruce Erb and Amy Webster. Thank you so much for attending tonight. We appreciate you being here and welcoming the newest part of our department. It's nice to have these folks here because Lucille doesn't just work here in Altoona. She also is a regional asset that's used by folks all over southwest and central Pennsylvania. And I'd like to thank also Trooper Scott Swazing back there. He gets to work with these two a lot, and they have a pretty good partnership. And with that, I'll turn this back over to Justin.
All right. As you can see, her demeanor's changed a little bit. She's ready to work. She's actually been able to smell the gas since we've walked in the room here tonight, so she's been waiting to eat. I think I've heard her stomach growl a couple times. So I won't hold things up here. I'm not going to tell you how many drops I have out in the room. I do have a couple out and about, so we'll see what she's able to find here, and we'll go from there. Ready? So as you can see, her primary alert whenever she finds some kind of accelerant, it's actually to sit. We don't actually use that term because we don't want to give any kind of bias to her being able to alert. So we actually use the word down for her to sit. But whenever she's very adamant that something's in a location, she'll actually lay all the way down, and which is what you saw here tonight. So she's a little bit of a messy eater here. That's why I have a towel. But she loves her job. She loves doing this. I love doing it. I mean, we've only been out of here less than 2 months, but I can see why Tim got so much enjoyment out of it over his time, because I love this little girl, and I'm glad I got partnered with her. And I thank you all for the opportunity. I thank Chief for the opportunity to follow in Tim's footsteps here. And I know he set a high bar here that I gotta try to meet, and I'm gonna do my best to do it. So, but thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so to finish this up, we'd like to finish with a badge pinning ceremony. Firefighting has a rich history which is reflected in the firefighter's badge. Badge pinning is a proud tradition within fire departments, signifying the introduction of fire department members to their new duties and welcoming them to their new department. This is also an opportunity to introduce Lucille to city officials, community, and other fire department members. By pinning the Altoona Fire Department badge on Lucille, it signifies to the members of our community that she is part of the time-honored tradition of providing aid and comfort to those in need during a tragedy like a fire. That tradition comes with the responsibility. By our very nature as firefighters, residents still invite us into their homes during the worst day of their lives, knowing that we were there to make things better. So congratulations, Lucille and Justin. I'd like to welcome you to our team by pinning, well, actually, we're not going to pin it on her. We're going to use this leather strap and strap it to her vest. Okay, thank you very much. And Lucille is now official. And Justin, good luck with Lucille.
Thank you, Chief.
Can we do a quick photo
With everybody.
with everybody up front here?
Yeah.
Linda says we need to have a picture with the council.
Tyra, Tim, everybody. Do one with like everybody with all your State Farm and all your people, all those people. And then do one with just like probably Tyra and Tim and the dogs. Look how cute. Aw. Yeah. Yeah, how cute. I do want to take one, but I don't want to walk in front of them.
Get one more. Okay.
Arlene, do you want to bring the rest of the elected officials, representatives up here? And then can we also have the State Farm members that are here? You want to come up and join us for this picture also? Trooper Swayzing, would you like to come up too? It's going to be a big group photo here.
Yeah, it's working. Huh? You guys, you need to take a picture of the dogs together. Maybe after this.
We have our sponsors too. You want to come up?
I'll go behind you guys. Thanks.
So if you want to,
Am I in your way, Adam?
some of you come forward and step down and we'll kind of.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in your way.
It doesn't matter what side you want to go on.
Thanks, Arnon.
No, no, you're fine.
Yeah, there you go.
One of those has to be good.
Fire your confidence.
Yep. Got everybody?
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I said you were a good sport.
I love everybody, everything.
All right, we'll move on to our final presentation of the evening, the Altoona Police Department Annual Report by Police Chief Joe Merrell. Chief Merrell?
Thank you. So, looks like we have a lot of meeting left, so I'm going to try to make this quick. Quite frankly, my bedtime's approaching. So last year, for those that were here, I talked a lot about the UCRs and NIBRS, National Incident-Based Reporting System, and how they're good to use for a snapshot of kind of what's going on, but you can easily get lost in the numbers. And I'll go through some of these, but instead of spending 15 minutes and reiterating myself, I figured I'd save us some time and just highlight that. Start with the personnel report at the end of last year. Last year we were budgeted for 62 officers. At the end of the year we had 3 vacancies. Not counting injuries or anything or people off on medical, you can see that operationally we were at 51 officers at the end of last year. This is year to date, and when I say year to date, I mean as of today. We sworn 2 new officers today, which we were thankful for. But next week we already have 1 officer retiring, so that vacancy will jump up to 2. When you factor in we have 1 off on medical and 1 off on long-term injured, we're about operationally 53. So we still have some work to do, but we are at least moving in the right direction. Calls for the year, a little over or a little under 23,000. It averages out to be about 63 calls a day that the officers are responding to. Again, I'm gonna breeze through these UCR slides pretty quick. There's a couple slides that sum them up better, but if you have any questions, you can stop me or ask at the end. We did see a pretty significant increase in officers being assaulted last year compared to 2020. The homicide rate was 0, but I do want to note all the UCRs are being generated by APD's incidents that are either reported to APD or arrests we were made. So this does not count PSP arresting Christopher Akins for the death of Rhonda Russell. You can see our rape offenses were a little slightly increased in the last year. Robbery offenses slightly down. Aggravated assaults slightly down. Burglaries almost the same. Larcenies were significantly down. Motor vehicle thefts were slightly up, and arson was slightly down. So those are what we call the Part 1 offenses. And the UCR, those are the serious crimes. And again, I have a summation slide later on that kind of sums it up better than these individual graphs. These are the Part 2 crimes, or for lack of a better term, the less serious crimes. If you remember, and I hit on this again last year, there's a lot of anomalies that show up when you look at these closely, so I want to go through a couple of them. If you look at the third line down, you'll see fraud. Fraud was significantly up. And what we saw was a drastic increase in scams, especially related to COVID, unemployment, where the unemployment office actually got hacked, but then even members of the city were, fake applications were put in. So that number is significantly high due to those types of crimes. Other ones are down that you typically see whenever we have more officers on the street being proactive. You see things like DUI and drug arrests higher. When you have less, you expect to see a lower of some of the proactive crimes. And then I talked about that switch from UCR to NIBRS, which we haven't completely switched over, but our report management system, or RMS, constantly gets updates to try to feed into that. One of the problems with that is it's constantly recoding different offenses. So if you look about more than halfway down where it says offenses against family and children, you'll see there's only 16. Well, that was 16 until there was an update early in the year, and then all those got recategorized and went down to all others. So the easiest way I can put it is all crimes got a tally mark. It just sort of got shuffled into different categories. So again, I don't, most people who know what they're talking about don't like to get too lost in the UCR numbers. This is the slide that if you were going to look at, it is a better representation. You can see our Part 1 offenses were notably down. Again, those are those serious crimes, rapes, robberies, things like that. That's obviously a good thing. You'll see the Part 2 offenses were just slightly up. And then when you look at the overall crime rate, it was essentially the same. The next slide talks about the clearance rates. Our clearance rates are generally higher than the national average, but I threw 2020's clearance rates on there so that you can kind of get an idea that even in each category, our clearance rates got a little better, which again, even the old clearance rates were still above the national average, but obviously that's something, the higher the clearance rate, the better. And then I just threw this on there so that you can see we obviously handle a large amount of accidents, not only ones that require a report, but then there's some that we just handle that are either minor in nature or they're on private property or something like that, where we just assist with exchanging the information. Obviously happy to report that there was no fatal accidents, although there were some significantly serious ones, and that there was 51 accident-related DUIs. And then again, some of the Part 2 crimes, DUI offenses, and the drug offenses are significantly two categories that when you have less officers being proactive, you're going to see those numbers. So for example, if I came in here and told you we had 0 arrests for DUI, that does not mean that no one's out drinking and driving. It just means that there's less people being stopped. And with drug offenses specifically, the ones that are reported in the news or on Facebook are obviously generally the bigger or long-term investigations. But the bulk of these drug numbers that you see are usually the patrol-initiated ones that are proactively from traffic stops or a call that spins off into a drug arrest. We obviously did have several large seizures. We're still seeing primarily crystal methamphetamine. We see a lot of heroin, and when we say heroin nowadays, it's almost assumed that there's at least some fentanyl, if not all fentanyl, carfentanil, other opioid derivatives. And then we often find weapons and or deal with shootings when they are drug related. With the overdoses, I started last year reporting these, and I added to it for this year. The number of calls we go to that are labeled overdoses were obviously increased. However, the fatal overdoses were down. I do want to make sure I point out that all the fatal overdose numbers were provided to me by Blair County Coroner Patty Ross. Obviously, her and her office are the only agency that actually certifies that a death is an overdose or not. We investigate them, but their office is the one that's in charge. So she provided me those numbers. And our naloxone usages, or Narcan is a more common term for it, continue to go down. That's primarily because of how prevalent Narcan is. Most times when we get on scene, there's already someone there, whether it be a family member, a friend, or something like that, where Narcan's been used. So we still carry it, although our usage, the times we are first on scene with it has decreased. Last year we talked a lot about juvenile arrests. There was a slight decrease in juvenile arrests. However, we still continue to see a trend for the last 5 to 10 years where the juvenile crimes are becoming more serious or more problematic. And it continues to be, I don't have another word other than at least appropriate for this setting, than problematic, that specifically certain juveniles will arrest time and time again. Will actually get called saying, hey, this juvenile is on probation, is a runaway and has an ankle monitor, and go catch him, and then we catch him, and the answer is just to release him. So that still becomes a problem that as a whole we all need to work on. But obviously it is, a slight decrease in arrests is obviously good. And then I want to harp on the other events that were non-enforcement related. We enjoy a very good relationship with our community, and we appreciate that. First, I would at least, I'd be neglecting my duties if I didn't at least mention that last year Chief Janice Freeling retired. Chief Freeling was not big on self-recognition, so she'd probably be upset if she knew that she was on this slide. But she, 20 years as chief, over 44 years with the department. I learned a lot from her in my career, still learning from her, to be honest with you. So I at least wanted to mention her. As far as other community events, we had a large participation in the PA Special Olympics Law Enforcement Torch Run. Our department is very big in supporting the Special Olympics. Last year we did the torch run with the most officers we ever had, raised a little over $2,000. Likewise, we raised a little over $3,000 for the Polar Pop. It was in place due to COVID instead of the Polar Plunge. AFD assisted us by putting a big ladder truck over top of us and dumping water on us. We also started No Shave November last year and donated over $2,000 to the Amelia Scherer Foundation. It's a local charity that supports kids in need and transportation for their families. We're excited to support that local charity. And then we did national nights out, numerous concerts, parades, and other charitable events. And then every year, for the last several years, we've teamed up with Professional Auto Body. We actually were a collection site this year, and they were able to provide Christmas gifts for 69 children, which was across 24 families. Last year, we set goals that I gave to you folks, so I figured I should update you on them. The addressing of manpower needs. So, again, I told you we're still struggling with that. We hired 9 officers last year, and so far this year, we've been counting the 2 today, we've hired 9, and we're still under our mark. From January of 2021 to date, we've had 8 officers retire or vest, and then 6 other officers that went on to other employment opportunities. We wanted to start a patrol CID rotation program. We were able to do that. It was very successful. Basically, patrol officers submit an application, there's a selection committee, and then they go up to our criminal investigation division for a 6 to 9 month rotation. It's a professional development tool. It also helps our CID out quite a bit with the caseload. And then they end up going back to patrol with skills that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So we're on our second round of rotations for that, and so far it's been very successful. And we did make progress, and we continue to collaborate with other agencies. However, again, staffing levels limited us to a lot of the proactive enforcement details. There's been a lot of like DUI patrols and things like that we just didn't have the officers to participate in. But we're still attempting to participate with the other county agencies whenever they have events. We wanted to continue the high standard of the training program and evaluate the training needs of the department. As I've highlighted several times, we've had a significant influx of officers in the FTO program. When we hire an officer and they need the academy, it's 6 months before we even see them again. We send them, we wish them well, we see them in 6 months. Then it's a 14-week training program. So there's a significant delay from the time an officer starts to the time they actually help us with operational needs. It's a credit to my FTO coordinator, my FTOs, and my supervisors. They were able to deal with that incredible strain on the resources and time without cutting corners. The program remained intact. We also continued, obviously the state mandatory training, but we also added other relevant trainings like de-escalation training, advanced investigations, supervisor training, etc. Policy review, this was probably the goal from last year that we fell the most short on. I will say our policies are pretty up to date. They're relatively new, and they're in line with PLEAC's accreditation standards. However, any policy should be reviewed periodically, no matter how good they are. And we did get some accomplished, but we didn't get a total policy review, and that was quite frankly we didn't have enough staffing to dedicate to it. And then increased community interactions. We were able to participate in more community events than we did 2020, which was obviously a breath of fresh air for everyone. And we started a community engagement detail, which I talk about on this slide. This is an overtime detail so that the officers don't have to worry about answering calls on the radio. And they go to the various parks and pools and housing complexes, or if neighbors are having block parties, and they get out of their cruisers and they interact with the community. On top of, humanizing the badge and getting to know the community, It also gives them a chance to talk to the neighbors at a more local level and deal with, non-criminal conduct that, quite frankly, often gets overlooked, due to high 911 call volume. It's been pretty successful, and the officers that have worked it really enjoy it. Again, it's non-enforcement oriented. If a crime does happen in front of an officer, they'll take action, but it's not meant for arresting people. And then we set goals for this year that we're in the process of working on. Obviously we're halfway through the year. We've been evaluating and changing our organizational structure to try to make the department more efficient given the current conditions. We still want to work on that policy review, staffing needs, develop ways to increase proactivity. We're trying to figure out ways to keep being proactive or increase our proactivity despite, balancing an overtime budget and, the staffing. We still have to answer those 63 calls a day. I'm a huge proponent that the proper way for a police department to function is proactively, not reactively. And proactivity it's not just running speed. There's a lot of forms of proactivity. So that's one of our primary goals. Continue with the community engagement, expand it, and continue with the local charities, and then continue to expand the individual training officers receive. It's no secret officers are expected to do more than every year. It's our obligation to train the officers so that they're adequately prepared to do all the new tasks that they're expected to do. So that's a continued goal of ours. And then really just to sum it up before I answer any questions, if anyone has any, the Altoona Police Department and really the whole city as a whole has enjoyed a relationship with the community that is extremely good. And that relationship has helped us keep crime, significantly down compared to other areas of this nation who sees turmoil between their police departments and community and skyrocketing crime rates. So that is something, that relationship we do recognize as a two-way street, and we need to earn it and deserve it, but it is something that we appreciate and that we'll continue to work towards. So that's all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep. Thank you, Chief. Great job with Manpower you had to work with there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, if nobody has anything further, we'll move into the public comment portion now. If anybody would like to address council, you may do so by coming to the podium, stating your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is David Wolfslego. I live at 1422 North 8th Avenue in Juniata, section of Altoona. I want to first off thank you very much for doing what you do, Chief, and what your staff does for the city of Altoona. I know in a lot of days that it's not a thankful job, but one thing I can say on behalf of many people that I know that are citizens of the city is that we will always have your six. We will be behind you wholeheartedly, especially with pusher programs like that, and try to keep our city safe.
Appreciate it.
With that said, my main purpose of coming before you tonight is I understand the McQuarrie building is up for sale and that it appraised at $112,000. But currently the people that on the committee are looking at accepting a bid for $1,500. And I don't think that that's ethical to accept a bid for $1,500 on a $112,000 building that would give the individual who purchased it $110,500 profit on day one. And I think what this needs to be done is it needs to be put back out for bid and bid for at least a month or two and see how many people you can get to bid for this piece of historic property within the city, and see if you get anything higher. And I would start out the bid at $115,000 minimum, with a request of financial resources being able to take on the structure and revitalize it, and that you could refuse the bid if they are not forthcoming with that information to the committee that is looking at this. I don't think in the future that it would be wise for the city of Altoona and its financial constraints that it's had over the years to take a property that's worth this amount and sell it for a great loss, and look at the employees and look at the staff that request things and say, we can't afford that whenever you're giving away a property at a loss. That's not feasible. So as a citizen of the city, people are watching, I'm watching. So I will be looking forward to seeing this go back out for bid and be put back up and allow people to openly bid it and have it advertised through the television, the newspaper, et cetera, the media. But thank you very much. That's the reason why I came. I appreciate it, Mayor. I appreciate it, council, staff. Thank you for everything you do. And also, too, thank you for taking good care of the highways and the parks and everything. With the staff that I noticed, you had a shortage of staff over the winter. You guys did a great job. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hey everybody, how are you? My name is Nathan Andrew. I'm at 2803 Broad Avenue. I had a quick question regarding the ordinance section of today's agenda. I had looked into, so it's item number 1, which is the corporate housing section here. I couldn't find anything online or other that helped me clarify what exactly corporate housing was. I don't know if anyone has like a definition of what corporate housing was. I had looked into this in the website that I think is maybe co-sponsoring, this ordinance or whatever it might be. And when I looked at the website, there's nothing there besides an application, which looks nothing more than like a regular rental property application. But my concern was, or my question is, what is the difference? What is corporate housing? And if you're taking some property in the city of Altoona and going to rezone it to be corporate housing, I'd like to know what corporate housing is, because it doesn't seem any different to me than like an Airbnb or basically somebody who owns a great big building complex and is turning part of their complex into shared amenities. And my question is there's nothing online, and to me, it just seemed like the kind of business model where a big corporation comes in or a big landlord comes in and is going to run nothing but like, what could be applied for by people to be like a drug den. I happen to live somewhere else. I live in New York City as well, and I see these things happen all the time there where they take these properties and they rezone them and they suddenly become basically in and out locations for crime. When I looked at the particular application for what business corporate housing is, it looks to me like there's no difference than a regular rental application. So I didn't know if anybody here had looked into this further. What is the real difference? And why would perhaps this whole area be rezoned for a new business model without having maybe at least more a better definition as to what corporate housing is? Because this seems to me, it seemed very open-ended, and I really did the homework. I don't know what corporate housing is, and I feel like I live in the city now as well. I don't want riffraff. I don't want drug people running in and out of these things. I don't want any of this to happen. It's already bad enough, and the bad neighborhoods seem to be kind of growing out or expanding into the neighborhoods. It just needs a look. I mean, maybe it's all fine. It's great. I don't know businesses that are coming here and looking to put up people for a few weeks or whatever. For whatever reason, we have hotels. There's plenty of rentals on the property. It seems to me as a way to get in the lowest of the low income, put them into one building, let them rent these things super short term for whatever purposes that renter might have, which might be legit or non-legit. But to me, it just needs a look. It seemed very vague to me, and when I really go to the people online to see who is maybe presenting this thing as corporate housing, there's no definition of it. So I think before anything gets passed, it just needs to be more clarified. I have no idea what it means, so maybe somebody could
Tom, yeah, do you want to
take a look. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, the amendment to the zoning, it actually has the definition for corporate housing in it. And it's a dwelling unit owned or leased by a business entity that is available for rent or for hire for transient occupancy by the business entity's officers, employees, family members of the officers, or employees, consultant, vendors, or contractors. So the situation you described would not be applicable. Okay. So this would be if I have a business and and I'm just bringing in, say, like contract nurses or contract, like a vendor I'm bringing in to do work for a couple weeks at my business. The business owns this property, and it's, they basically can charge the fee for that person to stay there. They got to be affiliated with that business. This is not, I now own this, and I can rent or hire to anyone I want.
Then why does it appear that I can apply online? Why is there a public application? Do you know?
I'm not.
There's on the website. There is a public application. I don't have it handy. There's a website online for, and the name escapes me, of one of the partners. So I pulled this up in the Altoona Mirror, this article a while back, and I think the gentleman or the lawyer who's ever kind of pushing this thing along provides a website for one of these companies that want to do this. And I can actually go onto their website, and I looked at the application myself. I mean, it has a fill-in-the-blank application. So if it's for a private entity, such as a business, if I own a business, a car shop, what purpose would there be for a public application for me to submit? There's even a phone number I can call. I mean, it would seem to me like this would be more of an internal thing, or maybe the city needs to approve it, but then I feel like I can apply online. I can get you the name of this.
That's not a city application, is it?
It's not a city application. It's an application from the vendor, from the rental property owner. You can go online, you can download a PDF, and you could submit it directly to them. It asks you what your income is. So why would a business ask you for your income when they employ you? So I'm confused by all of this.
Is this a local person that you're speaking of?
It's a local company.
Okay. That very well may have additional rental units available that wouldn't be considered corporate
Maybe,
housing.
and none of that is clear, so it's quite confused. You see why I would be confused
Right.
if that's the case, because if this is the company that happens to also own, happens to want employees to come here and work for them on their behalf and rent a place in the meantime and do whatever is needed done, there seems to be no clarification. Although I can say this website was just created this year, and it has no other information on it. So I don't tend to believe that would be the case. I'm happy to give you guys the website, but there's an article in the Altoona Mirror. I'll pull it up on my phone here today before we head out. It just seems, I'm confused by it, because what you say sounds perfectly fine.
Nathan, if I may jump in.
Yeah.
The corporate housing definition came about because at the last zoning hearing board meeting, the gentleman that is sitting there in the black polo shirt, him and some of his partners are trying to do this professional housing in the city, which is what the solicitor described.
Yeah.
But what they're trying to do also sounds a lot like rooming and boarding houses, which is kind of, I think, what you described.
Yeah, it's like it seemed like a hostel online when I really looked at this.
To avoid conflating the two or mixing the two up, the zoning hearing board solicitor said that what they wanted to do did not meet the zoning definition or the criteria to get a zoning variance in the central business district. So this amendment is only targeting the central business district, which is the downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
He recommended that the city add a new definition to our zoning that would be applicable to this new type of housing, which is becoming more popular in other parts of the country post-COVID with remote work and a lot of people travel nursing and things like that. So that's what this the corporate housing definition is going to allow these folks to build the townhouses in downtown that they wanted to build.
So there'd be no way for a public person to apply for this housing,
Correct.
if I'm correct. Okay, then that answers my whole question, in and out, if that's the case. If a public...
Well, to my understanding,
Yeah.
but to meet the definition, it would have to work that way.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you, everybody.
That was a great question and great job on the homework you did for that one.
Oh, thanks.
Way to go.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Randy Green. I'm a local business owner at 1701 3rd Avenue. I'm also a local developer and landlord in the city of Altoona. I'm proud of my track record as a landlord and the work that I've done since I've been 21 years old in this town. I'm here today representing my business, Professional Housing Solutions, and I'm speaking in favor of the new corporate housing definition that's on the agenda tonight. Professional Housing Solutions is proposing to construct 5 townhouse units located right across the street, 1510 to 1512 13th Avenue. The existing site previously contained 2 vacant and blighted residences that we have recently demolished. The site is located within the commercial central business district. The proposed townhouses will be leased by bedroom with a total approximately of 17 bedrooms within the 5 townhouse units. The individually leased bedrooms classify the proposed project as a rooming house according to the definition provided by the City of Altoona zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance does not list rooming house as permitted or special exception for the commercial central business zone. However, it is permitted use approximately 90 feet away. Professional Housing Solutions is requesting a new definition to be added to the city's zoning ordinance that would better fit this type of housing. There is a need for housing in the Altoona area more geared towards business professionals traveling to the area for work that can be leased by bedroom and lease in lieu of leasing an entire townhouse or an apartment. We are proposing to include a new definition for professional housing that would allow this type of housing within the commercial central district zone.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, I'll be very quick. This is exactly the website I was referring to, and I have it here on my phone. My basic question is it for your own? So if you are a business owner and you send your employee here to Altoona to stay in one of these townhouses, is it rented by the employer for the employee? Or does this turn into some sort of public amenity? Because the definition that the gentleman here gave me seemed clear that it seemed more like an internal company rental. And the definition that I'm provided by the Professional Housing Solutions seems to be more like a public rental offering, at least from the application I see here on their website. So I'm still confused because it almost seems conflicting between what is actually being proposed by the gentleman here in the back and what Council Member Finn clearly defined.
Okay.
Right?
I'm not a council member, I'm just the
Oh,
solicitor.
I'm sorry, city
That's all right.
solicitor.
That's
Sorry.
all right. It's not just the solicitor.
I have my council
Yeah,
members
but
in
by
front
the
of me.
definitions, the dwelling unit is owned or leased by a business entity.
Oh, so they can own, so they're going to own or lease the building, but they can then rent it out to whomever
well,
they want?
Okay. I think this description here, if I'm a business entity and I'm going to lease this, okay?
Yeah.
And easiest example I can think of is like a traveling nurse.
Yeah.
They're going to come here for a two-week stint. I have this place leased. I can say, listen, we have this place leased where you can stay. And if they want to charge them for that, that business can, okay? Which, whether it be a nursing home or UPMC or whomever, the business entity, the local business entity would be the one either owning or leasing that particular dwelling unit and being able to charge it towards the people they bring in, whether it be independent contractor, vendor. This is not, and Mary, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding, this is not a boarding house.
Yeah, but then how are you defining who stays there?
I think
What's a
because
business professional?
Okay, it says business that is available for rent or hire for transient occupancy by the business entity's officers, employees, family members of the officers or employees, consultants, vendors, or contractors. That's in the definition that would go into this.
So anybody can call themselves an employee of any company and come here and stay.
No, I can't walk in and say, hey, I'm an employee of Sheetz if I'm not.
Yeah, it still seems quite vague to me. I mean, I would encourage everyone to look at the application online. I mean, I could apply for this.
Well, what I'm saying, this doesn't exist right now.
Yeah.
This is at the introductory phase.
Yeah.
So there would be no application for this because this does not exist at present in the city.
Yeah, but what they're setting forth or
Well, I think they have other rental facilities as well. Is that correct?
They do, and in a brief search of this website lists that it's a demo. I mean, it's essentially. No, there's
yeah,
no.
I
There's,
can.
There's
It's
no application.
There's an application here on their own website. It's Altoona-housing.com. It's their own website. So this is where this is why I'm confused, because it doesn't seem to me like this is a different application of any sort from what a regular renter would want to short-term lease. So that's all I'm confused about. It asks me for, it doesn't say what is your business must apply for you.
AltoonaHousing.com would I believe
Hyphen.
It might be the Altoona Housing Authority.
No, it's their own website. I have it here right in front of me. I mean, maybe the gentleman, it's Professional Housing Solutions. If you Google that, it'll pull right up. There's a little logo.
Well, we will look into that because
Yeah. I don't want to waste everybody's time.
It's only getting introduced tonight, so
Yeah.
it won't actually get voted on until the July meeting. So
Okay,
we
it
have-
just seems
we
a little
have
vague.
time.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to make one public comment on that. I was unaware of this. A few things you may want to consider is, number one, parking, because you have the Altoona campus, any housing for the parking for those would have to match this, because if they have an apartment, they have to have off-street parking.
Yeah,
And
parking
that would become an issue.
Parking will be addressed,
Right, and also too, that this doesn't turn into college housing and falls into that category, because those aren't individuals that are living here. They're only here for a short period of time. So that would be the same as college housing you see at the Altoona campus, which we all see what happens around that area. It's great, but there's a lot of enforcement, thanks to gentlemen like this guy right here, making sure that the codes are enforced. But thank you so much, I appreciate it. I didn't want to take too much time.
I just want to address some of this gentleman's comments. The ownership, we're not some corporate out-of-town group. It's three business professionals from Altoona, and what we're trying to do is provide housing for people coming here to work, not student housing. That'll be specifically defined. There's no students, and I'm just being honest. We're not here to create any sort of slum or tricky way or sly way to, have a boarding house or anything like that. There is a growing need, not just in Altoona, but around the country, for people coming in to the area for business. And whether their stay might be 3 months or 9 months, they can't afford to rent a townhouse. And they can't afford to stay an extended stay for 9 months. This is a solution, not just something that we're trying to offer, but it's being offered. It's a growing trend across the country to provide solutions for these people. It's to help the businesses, not just the top employers of Altoona, but also people coming in that are going to work for the utilities, UPMC. A lot of it is traveling nurses, which is a great example, but there's more to it. There's also, I've always had rentals in Altoona, and the affordability of them cuts out the riffraff. This neighborhood, this is going to be a huge improvement to the block right across the street. Instead of rundown houses, this is going to be a beautiful complex that we're putting a lot of time and effort to making sure that the land development is correct and the architecture matches the city around it. It's going to finish off the block, and it's going to be something that everybody can be proud of. But most importantly, to answer your question, there's no hidden agenda with this project. It's a positive thing, and we are definitely not trying to allow a way for people to have, places for, druggies or people to crash or some loophole to have slums. This is just to provide corporate housing to business professionals.
Randy, hi.
Yep.
Just since this is being broadcast and going out over the airways and we've played later on, maybe just for everyone who may be watching this now or at a later date, just for their own edification, would you maybe list a couple of the other projects that you've done in the housing that you've done? Because, I think we're all familiar with the first-rate job you've done on things, but those listening may not be. And if you wouldn't mind just listing a couple of those projects and what you've done in the community.
Absolutely. When I was 25 years old, I came before City Council. Bruce, I remember talking to you that day about the project at the Altoona Brace and Limb, which, I was a young man and I just was an aspiring developer, and I wanted to make really nice apartments in Altoona because there was none really offered at that point in time. And I got a education on my own, restoring that building. That building today is paid off. That building today is leased by UPMC, members of WTAJ, members of Curry Supply. I've had some great tenants over the years. 2 years later, I set out to restore Standard Supply, which is located at 2101 Beale Avenue. It was a one-year project where I turned it into a loft space. That project just finished off the amortization. I had one tenant stay there for 7 years. I moved out to Hollidaysburg with some projects. I did 1400 Allegheny Street. I did the Black Dog Cafe restoration of the apartments above that at 1507 to 1509 Allegheny Street, 611 Allegheny Street in Hollidaysburg. All of my apartment units, I purchase the properties, I renovate them, I put my blood, sweat, and tears into these properties. I make them beautiful, and I offer them to lease for a lot of my tenants are doctors, nurses, employees of the top employing organizations, Sheets, ORX, Curry Supply, and all of my tenants are business professionals. They're good people. I don't have any riffraff. I don't have any issues with these people. I have a great relationship with all of my tenants. I think every single one of them, I have 29 tenants right now. They would all speak very highly of me as a landlord, not a slumlord, but a landlord who's always a text or a phone call away. I'm not there to, squeeze lemon juice out of the lemon. I'm there to, really be a friend, and I want to continue this. I think that I'm good for the city of Altoona, and I think this project is good for the city of Altoona. And I know my two business partners, all we care about is doing good things for the city of Altoona. It's not financial. It's trying to answer the call of people like Matt Pacifico, Steve McKnight, who are saying, we need housing in the city of Altoona. And this stuff is not easy. It's risky. Just to get to the point where we are today, we have a lot of time, money, personal time away from our family, and a lot of risk just to get to this point. But the alternative is to do nothing.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to delineate some of those projects because you've done some amazing adaptive reuses of properties. And a lot of them would have either continued to further deteriorate or maybe even end up being torn down. And so I just appreciate you taking the time to explain that to those who may not be familiar with you, or people who are listening to this broadcast now or at a later time, not familiar with your work. So I thank you for that. And again, this is just for introduction tonight. We're not voting on the passage of this, so thank you.
Yeah, and
Randy,
you do great work, and we understand that. And quite frankly, I think Mr. Andrews' question wasn't about you or your group. It was about, could somebody come in here and exploit this and do something bad?
Yeah.
Whereas we obviously know you guys are going to do something great like you always do.
Hey, Randy, the one house you did miss was the one up on Ridge or Beaumont.
Oh, Ridge Avenue, yep.
You took an unused lot, and, you know, that came out really nice.
Thank you, yes. Yeah, that's the project I ended up selling that property, but yes, yeah, thank you, I appreciate that.
Randy, I just want to
David.
comment that I was at the zoning hearing board meeting the day you made this presentation, and I know there was a lot of people that were scratching their heads about, you know, what do you really want to try to do here? But as someone who lived in Harrisburg for 4.5 years through the week, I would have loved to have had this type of facility to look at for at least a partial living opportunity. So I think it's a great thing and great vision on your part.
Thank you.
Randy, and I appreciate your commitment to the city over the years, and quickly just reviewing the application, I actually viewed your application as an excellent way of screening for that for that group of that target market that you're looking for. Obviously, you're doing your due diligence, so I appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will close the floor for public comment and move into the resolutions. Linda?
Item A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held Monday, May 9th, 2022. Item B is awarding the Highway Yard Facility concrete floors refinish to Clark Contractors of Bedford in the amount of $144,021.24 payable from capital funds, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. What's going on here? There we go. Item C is awarding the 2022 traffic signal and streetlight materials package A to Merrell Electric of Altoona in the amount of $15,721 payable from the general fund. Further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item D is awarding the 2022 traffic signal and streetlight materials package B to Signal Service of Westchester in the amount of $10,224 payable from the general and capital funds, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item E is amending the 2021 CDBG program, transferring $82,099.20 from the 2021 street reconstruction project to the 2021 East Cherry Avenue sidewalk installation project. Item F is amending the 2019 Community Development Block Grant Program, transferring $21,367.02 from the 2019 UPMC Housing and Rental Assistance Program to the Family Services Incorporated Homeless Shelter. Item G is adopting the 2022 Housing and Urban Development Annual Action Plan for Community Development and Home Investment Partnership Grant Programs, and authorizing Mayor Matt Pacifico of the City of Altoona to execute all documents and certifications, and the city clerk to file appropriate statements, certifications, and meeting minutes with the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Item H is awarding the downtown parking study RFP to Trans Associates Engineering Consultants of Pittsburgh in the amount of $40,000 payable from the contingency line item, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item I is approving the ARPA Business District Revitalization Grant Program recommendations attached here too, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item J is approving a proposal from the Cohen Law Group of Pittsburgh to perform cable franchise negotiations with Comcast, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item K is approving a repository bid in the amount of $1,100 submitted by David Zukow of Crescent Road, Altoona, for property located at 2000 10th Avenue, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item L is approving a repository bid in the amount of $1,400 submitted by David Zukow of Crescent Road for property located at 2004 10th Avenue, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item M is approving a repository bid in the amount of $1,300 submitted by Manuel de Matos Paez Landum for Atlas Property and Transportation Corporation of Peabody, Massachusetts, for property located at 1420 Washington Avenue, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Are there any additions, deletions, or anything that needs to be pulled for a separate vote?
Yes, I'd like to pull item M for a separate vote, please, and I'll explain after we do the rest of the stuff.
Okay, I will call for the consent vote on all items excluding item M. Counts.
Item F is not correct. It should be a total change of $39,336.25. We're pulling money from the UPMC housing and rental, but we're also pulling money from HCD admin, totaling $39,336.25.
That's a typo then, on my part, because I have one of them listed, I think, on the short resolution. I have one of them listed. I just have the portion. Do I have to, is there anything we can do to amend? How do we amend, or?
A member of council can move to amend that. It would need to be seconded.
I'll move to amend
I'll
that.
second.
Okay, so it's moved by Dave, or Councilman Ellis, seconded by Councilman Butterbaugh.
Dave and Dave.
Second by Dave.
Yeah.
We'd need to vote then on the amendment, and then before
Correct.
we do that, though, we'd have to technically open for public comment again
Yes.
too then as well, so.
Correct, correct.
So right now, we would open for public comment, amending letter F on the Community Development Block Grant Program, and transferring, and the corrected amount would be,
I have it here. I'll go over it right now. Okay, I'm going to, first, before we get to the consent vote, we're going to go with this amendment to item F, which was moved by Councilman Ellis and seconded by Councilman Butterbaugh, and the new resolution would read amending, we're going to amend it to the 2019 CDBG transferring, it should be $29,367.02, and the 2019,
39.
oh, I was going to add the other amount. I'm getting ready to say the other amount. The UPMC Housing and Rental Assistance Program funds of $17,969.23, and they both are a total of, I don't see it on, oh.
39.
Where is it on the resolution? $39,336.25.
That's correct. Thank you.
And these are going to the 2019 Family Services and Homeless Shelter.
So now you have to open the floor for public comment just to deal with that.
Yeah, we'll open the floor now to anybody that wants to comment on item resolution F in the amendment. Seeing none, we will close the floor.
Okay, I will call.
F. F.
Letter F.
F.
I will call now the roll for the vote. Councilman Beatty? Councilman Butterbaugh?
Yes.
Councilman Carper?
Yes.
Councilman Ellis?
Yes.
This is just the amendment. We're
Yes.
voting just now on
Just
the
on the
amendment.
amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Ickes?
I have to abstain.
Councilman Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico?
Yes.
And the vote passes 6-0. And now we will do the consent vote excluding item F and excluding item M.
No, F as amended.
F is amended.
Oh, that's right.
Excluding M as in Mary.
Excluded item M.
Well, do we have to exclude F for Councilman Nickus?
No,
Oh, okay, cool.
Show these things.
Cool.
Councilman Beatty,
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ellis,
Yes.
Councilman Ickes,
Yes, with the abstention of letter F.
and Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
and Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
And the consent vote passes 7-0. And on item M, which is pulled for separate vote,
Yeah, I like to, like when I see folks from out of town or out of town corporations, I like to try to call them up or get a hold of them one way or the other, because in our information packet, they submit a phone number. And so these folks never called me back. Usually I at least do reach somebody or somebody returns my call, but a lot of times these companies are sort of quasi just there. Plus even the driver's license submitted on this one was like a provisional temporary Massachusetts driver's license. So if there's nobody around town that's going to take care of the property, I typically like to vote no, because over the years I've seen this happen too many times where it just ends up going right back into the repository, or somebody has a problem and there's nobody to get a hold of. Sort of, and I refer to places like this sort of like speculation companies where they just buy up parcels all over the country and see if one sticks, and don't really seem to have anybody around to care for the property.
So you're suggesting a no vote on this rather than just tabling it?
Yeah, I'd suggest a no vote, because they didn't even bother trying to get back at all. And so if anybody had any trouble or needed to reach somebody for this, they're lots of luck.
And just again, for the public's consumption, you identified yourself in the message.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's-
Yeah.
I mean, I figured you did, but
Yeah,
I just,
yep.
again, for the public
Nope,
consumption.
that's a great
so.
question.
All right.
okay, I will read item M, which is approving a repository bid in the amount of $1,300 submitted by Manuel de Matos Paez Landum for the Atlas Property and Transportation Corporation of Peabody, Mass. for property located at 1420 Washington Avenue, Altoona, and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Councilman Beatty.
No.
Councilman Butterbaugh.
No.
Councilman Carper.
No.
Councilman Ellis.
No.
Councilman Ickes.
No.
Councilman Kelly.
No.
And Mayor Pacifico.
No.
And the vote does not pass. And we have one ordinance for introduction. And it is an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 800-6, definitions applicable to entire Chapter 800 and Chapter 800-55, Central Business Commercial Zone of the Altoona City Code, to provide a definition for corporate housing and to add corporate housing to the list of permitted uses for central business commercial zones within the City of Altoona. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance?
So moved.
This ordinance was introduced by Councilman Butterbaugh.
All right, we'll go into the city manager updates next. Omar?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I just have a few informational items to bring you up to speed on tonight. First item is that we are now accepting online payments for certain types of city-related payments. On the city's homepage, on a tab at the top right-hand side of that page, you can access the payment menu by clicking on it. It leads into different areas where you can choose the type of payment you want to make, and then drill down from there as to find the invoice and so forth, if there's an invoice involved, and make that payment. So that went live at the end of last week. Another item to bring you up to speed on is that Diana and I met with Dave McFarland, the Blair County Planning Commission Director, and we're trying to gear up for production and distribution of an RFP for the comprehensive plan. I know we talked about this before. We will be undertaking that going forward. The last one, the one that currently exists, was done in 2013. We would look to take action on this and move on towards the end of this year and into next year to formulate that plan. Dave has agreed to be helpful to us in a variety of ways, including developing the RFP, soliciting a vendor to do to put together the plan, and to participate in any group that we might need. So that's all good. That's all good news for us, and we'll be hearing more about that going forward. The other thing I'd just like to point out is that along with some other staff members, which just be putting an increasingly large amount of time into the activities related to the Redevelopment Authority and the Land Bank. The Redevelopment Authority, as I'm sure you know, was pretty much dormant for a period of time, and the Land Bank is just kicking off what it does in the city, and it's just gearing up both those activities, or all those related activities, just is taking a lot of resources, a lot of time and resources from our staff. And I just want you to be aware of that. We're not complaining. I'm not complaining. We expect it to happen. I just want you to be aware of it, and we expect the payoff to be blight reduction in our city and improved redevelopment of our city. So again, just kind of for your information. That's all I have.
Thank you, Omar. We'll move into council announcements. Councilman Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I think we all are saddened by the death of Don Morden, and someone who was a very frequent visitor here every year to council, and the great work she did, the foundation named after her son, and the efforts for pediatric cancer. I mean, she's certainly going to be missed in this community, and I think we all share in that loss and are very saddened by that. Chief Merrell, I did have a question for you, and perhaps I should have asked it when you were giving your report, and that is, in the news recently in Harrisburg, Senate Bill 1183, which was introduced and passed, and then I think even amended at some point. This is the proposed legislation that talks about the confiscating of certain off-road type vehicles who are operating illegally on public streets, dirt bikes, ATVs. I didn't know if you had any perspective on that, and a lot of times things get done in Harrisburg and Washington that maybe is thought to be helpful but doesn't necessarily address the problem, and I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, if that's something that we as a council body should be trying to support. And also, I just was curious as to how the mechanics of that might work, because if you get someone and can stop them, then do we have a pickup truck that you could get someone out to confiscate that off-road vehicle with?
Yeah, so I'm not probably familiar enough to comment too much publicly on that. I can tell you that I don't see how it would be overly helpful for us in the city of Altoona, if I'm being quite honest with you. Procedurally, whenever we have to tow something, we call a tow truck, and if it can be released to the owner, it goes to the respective tow truck's impound yard. If it's something we need to retain for some reason, whether it's evidentiary value, a search warrant, or we need to identify the owner, then it comes to our impound yard and we take up room from Nate. But yeah, what little I know about the bill, I don't see a huge benefit, certainly enough to lobby for it, but I probably should look into it more before I...
Well, I'm sorry, wasn't really trying to put you on the spot with that. And Dave Ellis, I saw you, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in with your experience in law enforcement.
No, and I agree with you, Bruce. A lot of times Harrisburg comes up with ideas that they sound good on paper, but practicality of it, we're looking at space to store these things and the resources to move them. not even to mention as to how do you stop them half the time.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
the other
you
thing
know.
is trying to stop. I mean, it's the other thing I saw from this. It started out applying to third-class cities and boroughs, but not townships, and then it was amended to include the city of Philadelphia and second-class cities, Scranton and Pittsburgh. But you know, our problem, and we do get a lot of complaints about this. There's no doubt about it, and that's why it piqued my interest. But you know, they're going so fast. Trying to catch them is one thing, and then they're in and out of the city and into the township.
Again, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I will tell you, Councilman Kelly, there's a huge difference in what Chief Merrell and the folks here in Blair County and Altoona PD deal with when it comes to these ATVs than there is in Pittsburgh and Harrisburg. They're actually being used as part of gang opportunities and operations.
Well, I was surprised when in
and so-
Allentown, the number of they had already confiscated a huge number.
Right, it's a
And it was
major,
just-
it's a major problem in Philadelphia, and actually, we helped a few years ago facilitate a connection between the Philly PD and Pittsburgh PD because it was becoming an issue in Pittsburgh PD also. So we facilitated a meeting between them to deal with it, but it's a lot different than the complaints we get in East End where the kids are driving in the flats out there
Yeah.
and come into the city. This is more, it's like inner city gang activity utilizing these.
Okay.
And to echo what he's saying, I was just actually talking to a couple colleagues from Philly PD approximately a month ago. They're literally police cars being surrounded by gangs, for lack of a better term, organized, whatever you want, and literally harassing the police cars as they're driving down the road, circling them, blocking traffic, and completely. And although I'm not sure the legislation is even going to help them, but that's what it's aimed towards, not the 14-year-old.
Philadelphia stopped doing routine traffic stops for minor
Exactly.
traffic
Yep.
violations, right?
And that
So-
that again echoes that the environment we are
Yeah.
fortunate enough to police in around here is significantly different than the rest of the state.
Well, it's, you know, you're seeing now the backlash of some of these actions and overcompensations or overreactions, and Baltimore now asking for the National Guard to come in and help protect the citizenry after people decried and wanted to defund police departments. So thank you, and Dave, I thank you for the information. Mayor, I had one last thing, and that is, I would raise this to Omar, and that is, where are we with the impact of fuel costs on us in the city budget?
Yeah, so I just looked this up last week, within the last few days. We are right now a little bit under where we would expect to be at this point. I think we budgeted $315,000. We're about a third of the way through that right now. But of course, every time you go past the pump, the price is higher. So as we move forward, and we're going to be moving into the budget season here before long, we're going to take a closer look at that, and we may end up, restricting use of vehicles if it becomes, a bigger issue.
And you've seen some places where in municipalities across the country where police departments are saying that they can't make certain types of calls that are non-emergency calls because of the fuel costs and what it's doing to their budget. So, but right now, we're not in any danger of that impacting municipal services.
No, not right
Great.
now,
I'm
but
glad
as
to
I
hear that.
mentioned, going forward, we're going to take a closer look as we go forward at that.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Carper?
I have nothing additional to add at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Butterball?
Just wanted to say thanks to Chief Merrell. Great report, great job by our police department, and great job by all involved at the Memorial Day parades and different ceremonies around town. Lots of police folks involved. Public Works did a great job, as always, also. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Councilman Nickes?
Thank you, Mayor. Just for when we are back to having work sessions, I would like for us to, I had talked about this earlier in the year about taking a dive through the planning code, and would like for us to really consider that as we head into the fall. Thank you.
Councilman Ellis?
That's great. I'll spin off of that real quick. To follow up on Vice Mayor Ickes's interest in taking a dive into planning code, I had a conversation with a local developer who indicated that prior to COVID, there was going to be a group organized within the city to look at some of the obstacles in development in the city. And I was wondering if we could give some consideration to circling back to that idea.
Absolutely.
And, this person is still interested in serving. I think he was asked prior to.
We did this in 2012 and ended up taking out about a third of the planning code. And it's definitely time to look at it again.
Okay.
Can I say something? We a few months ago, we actually met with Dave McFarland on something else, and that subject came up. And one of the restrictions you have right now is you first have to do your comprehensive plan before you can amend, or you can completely overhaul your
Yes.
planning code. So you can amend the planning code right now, but until we get through the comprehensive planning process, we can't go further with the other
Okay.
codes.
I would also like it to include not just the planning code, but an overall look at when you develop or want to develop in the city. Also, I want to congratulate Chief Merrell for being recognized in the 15th class of the Altoona Mirrors 20 under 20. Also, Tim, one of your firefighters' son, was very instrumental in the success for the Altoona area high school baseball team this year, so please extend our congratulations to him. Also want to thank the FOP Lodge 8 for volunteering to place flags, the veteran flags at the Fairview Cemetery this year. I know that's it's got its own issues, the Fairview Cemetery, but the FOP actually volunteered to go up and get the flags placed so they could be there before Memorial Day weekend. So, and Tom, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Mr. Solicitor, I'm sorry, I should have
That's all right.
been so informal. Regarding the hearing last week, or last month that we were here for, the zoning hearing, should witnesses be sworn at that? Would that be appropriate for witnesses to be sworn at that?
Well, it's a matter of public input, public comment. So it's not necessarily like evidentiary type.
Okay, but there was some evidence presented in the form of a petition, and there's some question out there now on the validity of that petition that was submitted. So I was just wondering how that would work.
I mean, again, the process is a public hearing, okay? It's not, like a evidentiary, like swearing a stack of Bibles, that sort of thing. You're just getting public comment, so, no, I don't believe that's required.
Okay, all right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Beatty?
I'd like to congratulate Councilman Ellis. He pulled together a rehab of a home on the 900 block of 6th Avenue, along with some volunteer groups and some people who donated funds for materials, and rehabbed the front of a house there that needed it. And that's the start for what the land bank wants to do in Altoona, to bring homes that have deficiencies back into compliance, find a way to make Altoona proud and clean. The only other thing that I wanted to say is, as the RA continues to work, you be patient, because we've had a 30-year hiatus. So we're really trying to do the right thing for the city, but just be patient, and we'll do our best to get everything moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Today I was down in Hershey to attend the PARA conference, which is the Pennsylvania Statewide Association for Housing and Redevelopment Authorities. I was a speaker at two of the sessions there, the one being on land banks and redevelopment authorities. So the city utilized Act 33 to designate our redevelopment authority with land bank powers. So that's what that panel was on. I was on, excuse me, on it with the people from Clarion County Redevelopment Authority and Clearfield County's Redevelopment Authority. And then the second session with my good friend Mayor Mike Lombardo.
Sorry. Would anybody care to comment on what Dave Wolfslegel said or recommended for McCrory's to rebid?
think that decision rests at the hands of the redevelopment authority.
Right. Any RA members here want to say anything about that?
That process is still in the works. Nothing's been decided. So
The question is whether, I'm asking, inviting comments on Dave Wolfslegel's recommendation that the redevelopment authority rebid the McCrory's building rehabilitation.
I
Right.
think we'll get into that next week at the redevelopment authority meeting,
Right. Okay.
or 2 weeks. I'm sorry, 2 weeks, not next week.
This is for Tom, I guess. Regarding the ordinance that was introduced today, what I heard you read makes me think, and I may be totally mistaken, that an ordinary individual who comes here for work, or anybody, wouldn't be able to rent from Randy Green because he's not a corporation that has his own employees coming to rent. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, the definition would require the dwelling unit is either owned or leased by a business entity. So theoretically, if I'm coming, if I'm a business and I'm bringing in someone from outside for a couple months, as was described before, I would have the ability to lease that dwelling unit from Randy Green.
Right, like UPMC bringing in nurses or something like
Right.
that. But
It very well may be that entity may pass along that charge to that outside vendor or employee they're bringing in.
Okay, I understand that, but what if say a nurse from Scranton comes here to work for UPMC or whatever, and decides to rent from him on her own? Is that not legal, or won't that be legal if this goes through?
Well, I think and Matt, you can chime in on this too. I think the idea was that the local businesses were looking for professional / corporate housing as a means by which to have a place for their outside vendors, outside contractors to come in, to be able to, they could steer them to get a place. I guess, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But would that
The
not...
definition has it going through the business.
Mhm.
That's
right. Was it intentional then to limit such a project to that sort of thing?
Well, I think with trying to define this was trying to be as precise as possible to avoid some of the potential pitfalls that was referenced in, I'm sorry, sir, I forgot your last name. Thank you. That was referenced earlier.
Oh, okay.
So that was the intent, to try to be as precise as possible.
Gotcha. Okay. Regarding the parking study, I'm not sure whether Omar would be the one to answer this, but why did you, well, first of all, how many bidders did you have?
We had 4 respondents.
And why did you pick the bidder that you picked?
Several factors. They seem to be the most comprehensive in terms of their response and involvement with the stakeholders in the community. They had a little bit tighter timeline as far as how quickly they would get done with the project. They had Pennsylvania references and Pennsylvania experience. They had outstanding references, both the references that were checked that they provided, and then some secondary references that we checked into. They had nothing but good things to say about them.
Did the 40, I think if I remember, it was $40,000, the cost, was that pretty much in line with what the estimates were?
Yeah, that was the amount identified in the RFP.
Oh, okay. You mean as a recommended expected cost?
Well, it's just, that would be the top amount.
Gotcha.
And all the respondents were within a couple $100s of that, I believe.
Does anybody on council want to say anything about the potential importance of this parking study?
Yeah, I think it's it's and needed and important. I mean, it seems like a silly question to ask all of us sitting up here.
Well, sure, that's why I
You know,
specialize in that sort of
there's
thing.
a lot that I think, you know, need to be reviewed of how we handle parking in downtown, you know. I don't recall any other cities where you could go right into the central business district and park anywhere you want for free. So, you know, I'm sure they're going to look at that and consider that as a factor. Consider the fact that that our parking garage is getting fuller, that we have one parking garage at Gables that is out of commission right now. So you have those people now taking up parking space in other places downtown. So I think the timing of moving forward with this study is definitely perfect as far as all there is to kind of review and look at.
Bill, I don't think there'll be any further development downtown until we address parking in one way or the other. Because, you know, if you come downtown during the day, the downtown's parked pretty full. And as some of these businesses ramp up, it's gonna be a key item to bringing developers in and give them the tools that they need to make their project successful, so.
I think the approach has been historically, we'll deal with this when it's an emergency, and I think we're there.
So I think the other thing that's important to note is that when we discussed this, the idea of putting an RFP out, it was prior to the situation with the Gables parking garage. So I think the whole council felt it was a very important thing at that point. And then once the Gables factor entered the equation, it's even more important to get it done.
Does anybody know what the status of that is? Like, is the owner of that building going to repair it, or?
Rebecca knows what's going on. She's been in communication with the ownership group.
So they did contract with a company to perform an analysis and prepare a report on the condition of the building. That will give the owner some idea of how to proceed, I guess, whether it should be a full demolition, maybe a partial repair, like level by level, or if it'll be an entire repair. I think at this point it's just going to depend on the assessment, and I believe that should probably be done within the next week or two. She'll receive that, and of course we'll get a copy as well.
Mm-hmm. Does the city have the authority, I guess, to require that to be repaired or demolished?
We do. I mean, that was the purpose. The first step is for her to get the assessment from the structural engineer group that she contracted with to provide us with something showing the condition of the building and how good or bad it is right now, basically.
And would it be the city's intention, if it's not repaired or demolished, to force them to do that?
I mean, I wouldn't want to answer that until I see the report.
Okay.
I think it's a big deal that they're communicating and open. When it gets scary is when people don't answer the phone. But when people are open and communicating with staff, that's always a good sign.
Gotcha. Omar, would you care to comment on the business development grants and the response you got from that?
Yeah, we had an overwhelming response to the grant process. The council had identified $500,000 for those grants out of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We received applications in excess of $2.5 million. So we really, I personally was not expecting that. And I mean, that's a good thing in one way. It's not, it means that we had to restrict the number of applicants that received a grant, and then also the amount of the grant, just to keep it within budget. So it was a good thing, and it puts money in the community in a needed way to help to assist businesses and to help redevelopment within the city.
Can you say briefly, like, what the criteria were for awarding the grants? Was it just first come, first serve, or were they judged on the
No, so
quality?
all the grants were scored in accordance with, really with the guidelines that were identified by city council in the past. Those guidelines were then really embedded into the application itself. And, you know, the applicants then had to respond to the various questions asked within the application.
Okay, thanks. And one other thing, I guess, Dave, what hearing were you referring to when you asked Tom whether people should be sworn in?
The zoning hearing that we had last month, prior to last month's council meeting.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.